Hey everyone, welcome to the last ThursdAI of the year, December 28th, as we talk about everything that happened in the AI last week. And then we have a few expert panelists. This week is special because of the last one. We're also going to do a predictions round. We're going to go through all of the sections we usually cover, which is open source LLMs, big company AIs and APIs and large language models, vision and video, voice and sound, AI art, diffusion and 3D. And then we also have tools and agents, and we're going to do predictions on each one, or we're going to try to give predictions on each one. And with the hopes that next year we're actually going to be here again and then review back our predictions for the last year and just understand how much we have no idea about the future and how much exponential growth is very hard to predict. Hopefully some folks here in the audience also already had predictions last year. I know I had them, but I couldn't find my tweet. I definitely started thinking about, okay, what of the products that I use is going to be infused with AI last year? And just as a reminder, a few weeks ago, actually no, almost exactly a month ago, ChatGPT was 1 year old. And so we did a recap of the whole year. And if you want to listen to that's on the ThursdAI.news Substack podcast as well. So you're more than welcome to listen to our recap for the year if it gives you some ideas about what to predict. And I think it's time to get started. We don't have a lot of news. I don't know if to say like luckily or unluckily. We don't have like tons of news to actually share, but we'll run through the news quickly. And then we will actually open up the stage to folks to give us their predictions in one of these areas. I don't want to like restrict it to those areas just because it'll be easier for us to then recap. And so again, the areas that we usually talk about, this is how we also give updates. Open source LLMs is the first one, is the main category that we usually cover. We love that. We love that the folks who do open sourcing and fine tuning join ThursdAI. Then we're going to talk about big companies and APIs. I have Umesh here who's joining me recently. And then Umesh, you have experience in using some of these big companies. I know we talk about Microsoft a lot. Vision and video. Our resident vision person, Skalski from RoboFlow. I don't think he's available today, but hopefully some other folks. But we all got multimodal vision, so there's a lot to expect there. Voice and sound, there's been crazy advancements in that area, especially if you guys were here last week. We talked about Suno and everybody like generating full-length tracks now with Suno and voice, I think, is the preferred ChatGPT interface for many folks as well, so definitely going to talk about that. And then AI art and diffusion has been just incredible. I've seen many mid-journey comparisons this week, and we're going to cover some mid-journey stuff as well. And then tools. So again, open source LLMs. Actually, should I post this? I should post this. Yeah, I'll just post this as a pinned reaction so you guys will see and be able to go back there. Let me see if how do I actually do this? Oh, right here. Okay, I'll post this in comments. Sections for predictions for 24. All right, you're going to see it in comments. I'm going to pin this to the top of the space, and then we're going to get started, which is a thing I keep saying this. All right, so with that, I'm just going to say hi to Umesh. Hey, Umesh, welcome.
Hey, Alex. Thank you. Excited to close the year. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's been an insane ride. And I think one prediction that we can make even before we start the prediction round is it's going to keep accelerating and being more insane. Exponential growth is happening on multiple fronts. And okay, so this is, I guess, the news segment. There's not a lot of stuff, but we'll try. Also, the whole point of ThursdAI is we stay up to date so you don't have to. So there's definitely some stuff, and we're going to go deeper into some of the stuff. I think one of the more interesting things that happened I'm actually going to jump around a little bit, but we'll start with open source. A friend of the pod, a frequent co-host, LDJ Confirmed, released the Capybara dataset. Capybara is a set of models that range from, I think, as small as 3 billion parameters to 34B. I think there's even one fine-tune on Yi. And the Capybara dataset is a pretty cool dataset, and it's now fully open source. So shout out to LDJ Confirm for that. LDJ is a frequent friend of the pod and co-host who's recently very busy. So I wonder what they're cooking as well. I'm going to add this to you guys as well. And one cool thing about Capybara as well is, let me just add this to the top of the space, is that if you guys remember, if you joined some ThursdAIs from before, we've talked about context length a bunch, and there's a few folks who did like needle and haystack analysis for GPT-4 long context, for Anthropic Claude long context, and then recently for open source models as well. Actually, there's additionally something I wanted to add. There is a research somebody did on local llama somewhere on Reddit that tested a bunch of open source long context models, and concluded that the Capybara from Luigi 34B, I think it's trained on top of Yi, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the best for long context over 32K. And this needle in a haystack kind of lookup, we've seen this for bigger companies like Anthropic with their 200K. We've seen some interesting reactions from Anthropic themselves that said, hey, if you prompt our model just in this one specific way, the accuracy of our long context retrieval goes from 27% to like 98%, which is funny, but also shows how far prompt engineering can still go. And I was waiting for a recap like this for open source models and their long context, because we've talked about long context. We've talked about Yarn scaling method. The authors of Yarn, actually, we had an interview with them on ThursdAI. Long context is something we've been tracking this year for sure. And recently it came under kind of like scrutiny / fire because of the ability to actually retrieve proper information from those long contexts. So it's great to see that somebody actually went and did an analysis and tested like a bunch of open source, in addition to just like the closed source in context and retrieval. This is obviously happens on local llama. So if you guys are not following ThursdAI yet, you may not know this, but local llama, the subreddit, even though the rest of Reddit probably is not for me, but local llama is a very cool place to hang and check out the news as well. And in fact, a little secret, some of the stuff we talk about is sourced from local llama this week as well. So I definitely run through the most interesting things in there for the past week before I give it to you guys. So in the area of open source, we have obviously longer context is good, but now we have a comparison, and Capybara dataset that was used to create one of the best models in terms of like long context is also open source from LDJ. Shout out to this. Let me send him some applause. Yeah, applause. And then the other thing that I wanted to do in open source to mention is that our friend of the pod, Technium, that you guys all know and love with Open Hermes stuff, also released a Yi fine-tune from News Hermes. News Research is the company, and then News Hermes. Hermes is the data set that Technium uses to fine-tune, and it's one of the best ones in the 7B area, I think still, based on LMC Serena. And now there is a 34B fine-tune of the same model, and this beats every previous news research models in all the benchmarks. Now, benchmarks being benchmarks, that's not to say that real-world performance of these models is significantly better just because it beats on benchmarks, and we're going to talk about this in a second. But it is a proven data set. We've seen News Hermes 2.5 getting mentioned by multiple folks. We know that some of these our gut feelings based on the community and the vibes, and so definitely worth checking out if you can run this. On benchmarks, it beats Mixtral, which is pretty incredible. Mixtral is a very apt model that was just released. I don't know, Mesh, if you have any comments on the Yi stuff from Technium, but I wasn't able yet to run this. And
yeah, just one. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. No, I just sent you a message that I just wanted to add that this is the first model from News, like the fine-tuned model, which has 200K context length. So that is also very interesting.
Oh, yeah. A small detail that I forgot, that open source is catching up to 200K. I actually missed this, man. Wow. Okay. I'm going to add this to the top. I think, it's pinned for Technium. So Technium is definitely proud of this one. I don't know why I say Technium. It's Technium. It's a model that's great for coding assistant as well. And you're saying it can fit in the 4-bit quantization, it can fit on a single 24 gigabyte consumer GPU, which is, we're going to have to cover this in our prediction round as well. Like how many step downs we're going to continue to see in the world of open source. So yeah, the top tweet now is pinned for News Hermes 2. on E34B for Christmas from News Research. And I actually don't know if the dataset is open. I don't think the dataset is like fully open for us, but you can run this with you can run this with LM Studio on your Mac if your Mac is like one of the bigger ones, one of the beefier ones. I'm actually planning to, in the next year, I finally got my Mac. I'm planning to test all these models before I actually bring you the news. Oh, yes. Thank you, Ariel, from down below in the message. One thing that I did forget to add is that we also saw a release from Apple. It's called Ferret, and it was very interesting because like it was released and nobody talked about this, and then suddenly after a week there was released, I think. People was like, oh no, Apple dropped the thing. So let me go and find like a recap of this for you guys. Ferret, Apple. So Apple released the Ferret on December 23, I think, and there's a Gradio demo as well. Let me copy this and reply to the space so you guys will see it. 1 second. I should have prepared links better. Okay, so here's the second one. Apple releases Ferret, and Ariel, if you want to chime in about Ferret, you're welcome to come up because I haven't reviewed this, but yeah, we've talked about Apple's movement to AI more, and we're probably going to talk about this in predictions, Umesh, but definitely Apple has released like a few stuff. MLX was released, we covered that as well. And now they released LLMs in a Flash that talks about running LLMs specifically on lower hardware devices. And also, I think pretty much the same week or a week after, they also released Ferret, which is a end-to-end multi-modal LLM that accepts any form, referring and grounding anything in response. Umesh, go ahead, and Ariel, welcome to... While Ariel joins, go ahead, Umesh.
Yeah, just quickly to add, whatever you said is definitely very interesting, but the most interesting aspect that we are studying from our side is the spatial capabilities of this model, because none of the models we have till now have that spatial aware sampler, and this is quite capable of that. And they have demonstrated quite interestingly. My engineers are actually working on some of the tests and everything that we can carry out. It is very interesting from that point of view.
Awesome. Thanks, Umesh. And welcome, Ariel. Folks, Ariel joined ThursdAI. I think during the summer we had a great interview with Ariel and Cole and Nathaniel about the platypus models. So welcome, Ariel. We missed you on here on ThursdAI. Give us some Ferret news. Thanks for sending this over.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for inviting me as always. It's always a good time. I just wanted to say I love the Ferret models. The one drawback is that you have to take the delta weights and apply them yourself. So I was trying to do it on my 16 gigabyte 4090 and it was like not playing nice. But otherwise, it's so amazing. You can prompt it and it will, if you're like caption this image, and you draw a bounding box around it, it will actually tell you, okay, there's a woman at this location and a basketball at this location and like bleachers at this location. And it gives you like the coordinates of all of these objects. And I think there are so many incredible applications. And I'm shook to my core that Apple released this, but I'm also so excited. And if anyone wants to play with it and they don't want to have to deal with applying the delta weights, just let me know. I have them up on Hugging Face. I'd be happy to share them.
That's awesome, Ariel. Thank you. And yeah, welcome to share. And we'll boost as much as possible next as well. Applying the delta weights, that's not something I'm familiar with. Could you give us like a one sentence what that actually like entails?
Oh, yeah. So they take the difference between the Vicuna weights, which is the base model, and their trained Ferret weight. And that's what they give you. So you just take that weight and you clone into their repo. You download all of the weights that they tell you and you run a script, which gives you the actual weights. You just need a little extra memory to load all of the models in and be able to take the...
Interesting choice from them, releasing something in this fashion, right? Instead of something that people could just do.
That was the one surprise. But other than that, it's nice. Yeah.
Awesome. But it's great to see that Apple is like giving us open source stuff like more and more recently. It's great to see, and definitely is a precursor towards some of the predictions we'll do around Apple, because we keep waiting for Apple. Everybody keeps waiting for what Apple will give us.
Absolutely.
Umesh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question, Ariel. Have you seen any kind of difference in 7 billion, 13 billion in terms of spatialness, like spatial pointing up? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I have. I looked at the paper initially and started with the 7B because it looked like from the benchmarks that they listed that they were very close in accuracy. But I actually found, at least for the use case that I'm working with, which is taking images and trying to generate the prompts that were used to originally generate them. And I've noticed that the 7B tends to get really repetitive. Like, it will give me the same coordinates 4 times in a row. And it also just misses a lot of color and detail description, where the 7B will go a lot shorter, and it'll miss that her scarf is green or the basketball is bright orange. Whereas like the 13B will give me like that little extra bit, which is actually really helpful when you're trying to do something like generate images from a prompt. You want it to be as detailed as possible.
And just very quick, another question, Alex, if you permit. When you do free form and fixed form, like box or rectangular shape, have you seen any difference in those? Because that could really define the use case, isn't it?
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually haven't played around with that much as far as which shapes I'm using, but that's a really great idea. I actually will probably go try that right now. Thank you for the suggestion.
You can go try that right now, but you feel free to stick around on the panel as we're going to do predictions.
Yes, always.
And would love to hear from you as well. So thanks, Ariel, for the segment about Ferret. And this joins the MLX framework they released recently that significantly improves or reduces the amount of requirements you have to run some stuff on Apple's hardware. And this joins the LLM in the Flash paper that they've released recently as well. It's pretty awesome to see Apple innovate, even though they innovate in open source. They give us some open source stuff. We haven't yet seen improvements in Siri. Siri is still dumb, and we're all hoping that next year Siri will be less dumb. I think on open source area, the only other thing that we are left to talk about is the stuff that we've covered yesterday, but I really wanted to cover this today as well. The current Hugging Face LLM leaderboard is a lot of models that are fine-tuned on Upstages. Let me go find this real quick. Leaderboard. So if you're not familiar with the OpenLLM leaderboard, you probably should be if you're listening to ThursdAI. This is the Hugging Face running metrics on a bunch of models. The current, if you remove the flagged models, there's the checkbox to show flagged models and remove them. Some of the models, they're on top, they're flagged under suspicious circumstances. Basically, if you remove those, the top 10 models right now are all fine-tunes of the same model. It's the Solar 10.7B model Instruct from a company called Upstage. And so this model was released a while ago. I think we've talked about this a couple of weeks ago. And yesterday, or a few days ago, they actually released a paper on how they achieved those top scores. And it's interesting, again, because the Instruct model, Upstage Solar 10.7B is in this weird range. It's not the 7 billion parameter, it's not etc. And so they finally released a paper on how they achieved this, and they achieved this with a merging technique. And there has been some discussion. Those of you who spent some time with us yesterday, we had a full space on this. I think we talked for 2 hours, trying to figure out like what's going on and whether or not some of the stuff that's going on are less than savory. So basically, Upstage, just a small recap, is a company from North Korea, a startup from North Korea, funded startup. They released a few models for this year, and they released the paper that talks about what's it called? Let me say, DSU method that they come up with. Oh, actually, you know what? It's really interesting. I had the paper bookmarked, and now it's 404 on archive. So it may have been taken down to get an update, or I'm getting the wrong link. But I think the paper's down, folks. So we had a discussion yesterday after I think Wing, I don't know if Wing's still in the audience, Wing pointed out that the method that the folks from Upstage released and claimed that is novel, this method has been actually used by the open source community for a while, and that their work is missing attribution to the person that kind of came up with this method, or at least like mostly known for this effort. And so we've had a long discussion about this. Unfortunately, that was not recorded. We didn't want to record this because we weren't talking any facts. But the method, let me just try to find the person who was in charge of this. Okay, yeah, I found the tweet. I'll pin this tweet to you guys as well. And so after the release, we actually had a discussion, and some folks released to Sung Kim. Sung is the guy who I think is the CEO of Upstage, and mentioned that the person behind some of these innovations, at least in the community, is Andy95, and there's a Hugging Face, and there's a bunch of models that were like built with this method. The method is not considered novel by folks in the open source industry because models like this were existed. Ariel, was Platypus also part of that? Was Platypus like a similar technique, or was that a different technique that, if I'm remembering correctly?
Yeah, platypus was different. We were just the basic merge, the plus equal sign and peft was like our best friend. We actually went and lectured at Sung's class, and he was like quizzing us on our merging techniques, and he was so disappointed when we were like, there's nothing special going on about our merging techniques, but I guess he found something special. I won't comment further, but yeah.
Yeah. And so Solar, actually, no, I do see the paper. I think just Hugging Face is bugging out on me. Sorry, not Hugging Face. Omar, I'm sorry. Archive is bugging out on me. Hugging Face is great and is very stable. So the scaling method they introduced is called DUS, and that's what they call this. And they claim it's a novel technique. And again, this is a model that's right now the top of Hugging Face, like OpenLLM leaderboard. However, if you guys follow ThursdAI, we've talked about often that this is not the only way to measure performance on models, specifically because a lot of those benchmarks are automated and it's fairly easy-ish to game. So, and folks do game some of those scores, right? And some folks train their models on the actual evaluation sets, etc. So there's a lot of debate about how do we evaluate models and how do we feel which models are like better or worse, and some of the answers is vibes, right? Like vibes from the community. So hopefully ThursdAI is providing some of the folks some of those vibes as well. But definitely I see that the same 10.7b Solar model from these folks, it's not as well performant on the LMSys arena, where LMSys is like a human rated preference. And again, every time we do ThursdAI, it's worth saying that if you don't know LMSys arena, or if you don't go there and you're interested in this area, please go there, please rank the models, just like prompt them. You'll get 2 examples and you choose which one's better to your personal preference. You don't have to be like a wizard prompt engineer for any of that. But this ties into this like ELO rank score that's based on human preference. And so we can actually compare and see that even though this model is like very high up, like top of the leaderboard in open source on Hugging Face, it's not as well, like the difference is stark. It's not as well performant on the LMSys arena stuff, and also that could be due to some of the methods they use to merge this. And so this merging method, aka Frankenstein models, it has been used for a while in the open source community. The folks from Solar came and said, hey, we introduced this novel method. As far as we know, as far as we talked about, there weren't no papers that talk about this specific method. They call this depth upscaling, but basically the same stacking of layers. Excuse me if I'm not going too deep technically, but it's basic stacking of layers has been happening in the open source community. We've talked about this. Some folks reached out to Sung, and Sung actually joined the discussion and said that they are willing to include the models from Andy95, who's the community considers the kind of the person to give props to for these methods. And I personally found that pretty great. First of all, to be on X and participate in this discussion, then have a discussion in Twitter Space and actually see that the company that kind of is under heat here is actually interacting, is willing to change their papers and give our links. Not everybody's still like super happy with the responses. There was a discussion with Miguel about the source of data and how the data mix is in there. But just to highlight that the current like top performing open leaderboard model is a weird range model, is the 10.7b. It came under a little bit of a fire because they claimed to do something novel that actually was used by the community. They engaged with it and they were willing to correct and make amends. And I personally find that as a green flag. I don't know if Umesh, you want to add some stuff on this? You were part of the discussion yesterday, I believe.
Yeah, let me gather my thought. Just give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, that's right. I will just say, folks are posting the actual paper itself. Thank you, Omar. I'm going to add this here. We now have this model, and I know that some folks in the community are like trying to train on this models. We'll see some results hopefully soon without giving out too much. And then it's a fairly decent model, especially in the very low range of parameters. You can run this on local device. It's not 7B, but it's a fairly decent model. Let me add Nistan, who was part of the discussion as well. And as Nistan, hey, welcome. I've been recapping the Solar discussion that we had and the reactions from Sung, but I know that you may want to add to this discussion. to the folks here, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I want to wait a bit until we run the forensic tool that someone ran before for Weight Watchers in Mixtral 87B, because both me and Winglian arrived independently, it seems, at this conclusion that it was Undi's model, and I thought it was never sleep on Hugging Face, but it turns out never sleep and Undi 95 are the same person. Yeah, we'll see, because it's the exact same setup. They don't mention they use merge kit, even though a lot of the other fine tunes on top of Solar.
So just for context, because not all of the people here were last week, merge kit is the open source that allows you to do this with different methods, right? It allows you to merge two different models, stack layers on top of each other to get like a different sized model. In this case, the 10.7b is two Mistrals. Is that correct?
Yes. So it takes in, Mistral has 32 repeating layers, and the 10.7b was a technique which takes in first layers 1 to 24, and then takes in layers from 8 until 32 from another model or copies of him, and then puts them together. So the source of why there was somewhat of a controversy was that this is something that the open source community came up with. It's been out for a few months. I've been commenting on another model like that I've been using. And then we had Solar just claim that this was a new foundation model, but then we found out it wasn't. It was the exact same layer merge. And on top of that, they didn't seem to understand on their paper why that layer merge works. They didn't have an actual deep explanation of it, which people, the open source community understands why it works that way. So yeah, that has been some controversy there. And we hope to clear it up, because we were all pretty, at least I personally was pretty supportive of Upstage 70B in the past and this model. It was just a bit upsetting not to see credit being given to just some random account that came up with this first and had it perform well on the benchmarks first. So there is, yeah, I will wait a little bit more until we do an actual forensics analysis and then say that it is exactly that recipe and not just like another 10.7p that they came up with.
Yeah, so I will from my end as somebody who just wanted to have this discussion. So this discussion, just for reference, at least it started on Twitter, but we definitely had a longer conversation with the group DM for ThursdAI, which we have to talk about ThursdAI usually, but sometimes there's fascinating discussions in there, and I don't want to keep them in there. I wanted to talk about this in the open as much as possible. So that's what we did, and that's the space we held. And Sung, the CEO of Upstage, actually engaged with the discussion in the community, which I find as a green flag. And they said they were willing to do the proper attribution for Undi 95 and their work. I don't know if it goes completely to the request of the open source community and how much they actually want the open source to be open source, but I definitely found the willingness to engage shows me that it wasn't like a nefarious trying to hide things. Go ahead, Umesh, and then we'll continue. Or Nistan, if you want.
Yeah, Alex, I just want to say I wasn't sure how much of that discussion we will refer to. That's why I was a bit puzzled. But I'm absolutely with Nistan on this, that we have to wait till we reach some kind of, let's say, a conclusion in discussion with them or interaction with Sung, for example. And the other thing that is very important from this particular episode is probably, as this kind of gains traction in terms of discussion, we'll have some kind of a framework that would come out of this, or some kind of understanding that will come out of this, that will help open source community in moving forward in terms of using the data or using the models to further fine tune or even train a different model.
Yeah, and I'll just really quickly say that Sung himself has done a lot of good work also on the medical AI side and published research. So I also want to give him the opportunity that maybe one of his staff members just used the model, trained it, didn't say anything, didn't mention anything about it, because he might just, it's very likely he might just not know, just given how quickly things move in the field. Also want to give him some time to clear it up with his own staff, and then we can all move forward before making any bigger claims.
Yeah. So I think just to wrap this up, there is some discussion about attribution and whether or not the methods that were used to train the current top open source leaderboard model, were those really novel to this team, or they came from the open source community? There's some discussion about this. The company is willing to engage, and Sung is engaging, and then we're going to see more attribution. And there's more to come here, but definitely we'll keep you guys posted. This model seems like very well performant, even though it doesn't beat other 7 billion parameter models, at least on human preference. Stuff like, I think OpenRMS is still leading over there. OpenChat from Alignment Labs and some other folks is still leading over there. I think that we're moving towards the next update here, unless we still have some stuff in open source they want to cover. Nistan and Umesh and Ariel, if you want to like chime in with open source stuff, feel free. But I think if not, then we're moving forward. Yeah, okay, yeah, we're moving forward. I see some folks in the audience who may still have some things for us to say. Omar, Zenova, if you guys have open source important stuff that we've missed, feel free to chime in. But we're moving forward. We're moving forward towards OpenAI, which is always in the news. I will not have the last ThursdAI without Yam chiming in on open source. So Yam, welcome to come up if you can, if you're able to. Excuse me, I'm getting a little bit losing my voice. Oh, we get Ash as well. Ash, welcome. 1 second, folks. We'll bring more people because this is a last year's party. I think Ash, welcome. We met on San Francisco, and then I don't think you came up to ThursdAI ever, right? Or you came just one time?
I think I came before, but just as a listener. And I feel like today, as we have a wrap-up party, maybe I have a couple of other notes to share with the broader community. I think most people agree that next year will be big for agents and multimodality. And we are not really super into agents, but we've worked a lot on multimodality with my team. And we wanted to share one last model this year, which we're doing in about an hour, which will be a generative model, a very small one, just 1 billion parameter, actually 1.5 billion.
Wait. I have a thing for this. Hold up.
Sure.
AI breaking news. Coming at you. Only on AI. We got breaking news, folks. Hey, Ash, thank you. So wait, are you not, you haven't released it yet. You're about to release this in an hour, so you're giving us like a sneak preview?
Yeah, there's a pull request on our repo. You can find it on GitHub as uform, UFORM. We'll merge it within just a few minutes. So essentially, we generally work on like very scalable systems for search and multimodal search mostly. One of the problems that we face is that when preparing data, you sometimes want to use generative models like Lava to improve the captions, to do some visual question answering, generate some synthetic data. And we realized that Lavas, though great, are expensive to run at large scale. So yeah, it's 7-ish billion parameters, and struct blip is also 7-ish billion parameters. So we've trained our own generative model that seems to be somewhat competitive. I'm not going to say it's like state of the art or a big revolution. It's a very small incremental improvement in the industry, but it's just 1 billion parameters, 1.5 billion. So you can run it on very small devices, and you can achieve like really high throughput on even like consumer grade GPUs. So you'd expect 140 tokens per second, even on RTX 3090 with vanilla PyTorch with nothing else. So it's like about 4 times higher throughput than Lava. And we'll be very excited to hear some more feedback. Oh, and one more thing, it also works in chat setting, even though poorly. Like we'll have to improve a lot on this next year.
Awesome, man. That's great. Thanks for giving us some insight into what's coming. Nissan, go ahead. I know you work with small vision models as well. I think Obsidian was the smallest one that we've talked about, right? 3.4 billion or so.
Yeah, and I actually had Neuralink create a clip model specifically for higher speed stuff. So we'll likely be releasing one. It's not a 1B, it's a 3B. I just had some trouble with quantizing and running faster stable LM. So we're just going back to Red Pajama because it performed better on those smaller models. But yeah, we'll also have something for a classifier releasing soon. So will be interesting to see. Also, if someone knows a very good, easy benchmark that someone can run for multimodal, please either DM or post it. I know there are a whole bunch. I just want one that I can just copy paste in, or have an API or have an API with some kind of structure you can send all your data to and get a response. Otherwise, I'll have to write my own. So if someone knows of a good multimodal benchmark that they've used, please
Yep.
let me know or post it publicly on this. Yeah.
We need more multimodal benchmarks. Ash, what are you guys using?
I'd actually +1 on this one, big +1. There are obviously benchmarks for VQA, but for captioning, the situation is really bad. Before releasing the generative model, we had our embedding models. For embedding models, we used MS Coco, and we've translated the training split of the data into 20 languages with all kinds of different APIs because our models are multilingual. But there's a couple of other benchmarks from Google and a few other companies. They're not perfect, but with generative stuff, it's even worse. For captioning, the best we found, which is still horrible, is clip score and rep clip score. And the problem with those is that they use clip to determine the quality of the alignment between the generated caption and the original image. And as we know, clip is not perfect itself, but you get a lot of bias towards a specific kind of descriptions, towards a specific length. And sometimes models that hallucinate more achieve higher results on clip score, which definitely isn't great for a benchmark. If you have any good multimodal benchmarks, either for embeddings or for captioning, just please let me know.
Yeah, it seems
Really-
that area is lacking. Go ahead, Nathan.
Oh, just really quick. I think they had LMSys for Llama Index did publish some on previous tweets. So I'm going to look at that because I know there were another one or two open source ones. So yeah, anyway, just looking to organize those.
So I'm actually looking forward
multi-modal
for this
ones, yeah.
discussion later in today's recording. We're going to have folks from Mila who released Robin. There's a multimodal vision models, like a suite of them, and I want to talk to them about how they test as well. And they combine Vicuna and Mistral and OpenNRMS as well. Definitely stick around. Let's talk about this because we're going into the multimodal area, and if there's a mess now with evaluations, it's going to be way messier, I think, in multimodal world, because it's like Ash, like you said, just doing captions. I think when Fuyu was released from Adept, and Fuyu was also a multimodal model, they talked about how difficult it is to evaluate and they even showed some examples. Should probably go and find that thread. It was a great thread with examples of the model actually performs well and tells you what the image has, but then the benchmark is really bad and expects this one specific statement of a thing, and that usually fails the score, but the model did perform well. I think thank you, Omar. I think last thing that we should probably at least mention is the Argila, folks. Argila, I don't know how to pronounce this. They announced Notux 8x7b, which is a fine tune of Mixtral. And I don't know if we saw a lot of Mixtral fine tunes before. At least I haven't. And so it's worth mentioning. They say it's like the top ranked MOE on the OpenLLM leaderboard. I didn't even know that you can sort them by MOEs. But yeah, it's a higher score, like fine-tuned Mixtral. It averages out just a little bit higher, not significantly, but definitely higher score. And yeah, worth shouting out that as we expected, Mixtral just around a month after its release, maybe a couple of weeks, like 3 weeks, is now getting fine-tuned as well, as we expected. A very well-performing model, and it's worth checking out if you're into this. I actually want to see if they released some of the code as well. Oh, they also use DPO, direct preference optimization, for fine-tuning this. And as I'm stuttering through this, our friend and dear colleague Yam joined. Yam, have you seen Notux stuff, or you want to react on that, or some other things?
Actually, I haven't seen this one specifically, but I just want to say that it's a little bit, there are tricks that you need to do in order to fine-tune Mixtral, because it's an MOE and so on and so forth. And moreover, it's a large model at the end. It's 54 million parameters. It makes sense that it takes a little while before we get good fine-tunes of this model. It's a little bit harder to pull off, but yeah, it's the best base we have at the moment. Yeah, exciting. It's just, 2-3 weeks from the moment we got it. Makes sense.
Yeah, they outlined that it's just a start for MOE fine-tuning, and right now, there's a high-rank MOE on Hugging Face. Omar, welcome. Omar, you're feel free to introduce yourself. I don't think you've talked on ThursdAI before.
Yes, hey everyone. Yeah, so I remember I'm the Chief Llama Officer at Hugging Face.
Love that.
Yes, that's actually my official title. But yeah, so what Bitcoin Base is really being the point of contact between Hugging Face and a bunch of different open source communities. So it's a mix of technical and community and product work. Yeah, so talking about Nuttux, what's interesting about it is really how it was fine-tuned. So they're having a couple of Mixtral fine-tunes in the last couple of weeks. So it's a fine-tune of Mixtral instruct. So Mixtral, they released an instruct model, and this was done using DPO itself. So it's a fine-tune, so supervised fine-tuning, then DPO. And they did a DPO on top of it. So this is a DPO squared kind of thing. And yeah, it's quite interesting. Originally, in particular, is interesting because it's a data annotation tool. They have been doing quite a bit of a data labeling tooling in the last 2 years or so. And for example, they found a bunch of bugs in ultra feedback, which is this preference data set that everyone is using. And yeah, so their focus is not that much on getting the best model, but really being able to get clean, high quality data and being able to do TPO on top of a TPO model itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. Omer, thank you for coming up and sharing this news. I mentioned Notice in my notes, but I forgot to add this. So thank you for pushing me. And I think Notice ends our open source coverage. I think we just have 2 more things to talk about, and then we're going to do predictions. So everybody who's on stage, please stick around on stage, and everybody else in the audience, if you have predictions to start thinking about, definitely start thinking about what you would want to do or what you would predict the next year will bring to us, and then we're going to have a discussion about this. I think the last 2 things that we want to talk about are not in the open source area. I think we've covered that plenty. We're going to talk about the big companies, and I think the main thing that happened this week in that area is the lawsuit that New York Times opened against OpenAI and Microsoft. And we've talked about this yesterday a little bit, but it wasn't recorded. So Umesh, feel free to join me here, and Mr. Niam, whoever, if you want to chime in. Basically, New York Times files a lawsuit against OpenAI and Microsoft, claiming that the models that they've trained are trained using copyrighted material and that they shouldn't include this material, and they're seeking to remove that material, and I think also to ask OpenAI to retrain their models without that information. We all know, at least like some of us know, that all these like large language models, they've been trained on a bunch of information from the internet. One Common Crawl dataset is like one of the biggest ones that they mention in the lawsuit. Common Crawl has, I want to say 54 billion, some crazy number of texts. New York Times actually claims that they're the 3rd source in there after Wikipedia and some other source, and they're like they're highlighted in the process as well. They're ranked higher than other sources. They claim that they have 150 plus years of rigor and journalistic attention, etc. And so all of this content was trained to use the GPT-4 models. Specifically, they have around 100 examples of a verbatim quote from New York Times articles. They don't share the prompt work that they used to get this happen, and I wasn't actually able to reproduce some of them. I actually went and tried to see if GPT-4 will give me verbatim the same articles, and I couldn't get the same examples that they shared. But still, they have around 100 examples of pretty damning kind of evidence if you're thinking about this in terms of, okay, here's the start of the article, and then they got the model to spit out almost verbatim the rest of the article. Now, I'm pretty sure those examples are cherry-picked, but still, given the way these things work, as they produce the next stock and predictions, it is interesting to see that they were able to pull out exact articles, more than 100 of them, from these models, even though these models they're not like lossless compression models. They're definitely lossy. It was very interesting. And the whole lawsuit is a big deal because of just the way that these things are working. All of these models were trained on a bunch of data from the internet. This data was treated by the Silicon Valley folks or some other folks as if you scrape it, then it's free, or to some extent. The Common Crawl database, which is the one that actually scraped it, they have a copyright notice on their, I think, website that says, if you use Common Crawl, it's up to you to go to each individual source and make sure that you're agreeing with their terms of service. So the Common Crawl kind of dataset is definitely removing the liability from themselves. And This is kind of a big deal if this goes through. And there have been a few threads on Twitter from legal quote unquote experts talking about whether or not this could be debatable or not. It looks like the examples are not debatable. I'm very skeptical personally about the examples being reproducible, but I don't know if that will matter at all. I'm not a legal expert, but it's quite a big deal. New York Times is a big institution. Another thing I want to add to this before I open up the stage to discussions about this is that OpenAI does have partnerships with Politico, so they do pay for some sort of something with Politico as well. And in the lawsuit, it mentions that New York Times had tried to come to an agreement about some amount of payment with OpenAI prior to the lawsuit. So it does seem like a outcome of a, how should I say, unsuccessful collaboration attempt or unsuccessful money extraction attempt, depends on where you're at in your feelings about New York Times. So it does seem like the lawsuit came after some negotiation attempt happened. And I think that's pretty much all the major things. So there's a lot of examples there. They filed it in the New York court, SDNY, I believe. This is a fast track towards bigger results. And what else? I think the prevailing kind of response that I see is that by the time this gets resolved, we're going to be on like GPT-7 or something, right? The court system is notoriously slow. Copyright law wasn't written for this new age of information, wave of technology. And yeah, we're going to hear maybe a little bit about this, but then I think it's going to take its sweet time in courts. I think that's enough of a background. If you guys want to chime in on this, feel free. Umesh, we talked about this as well. If you want to add some stuff, and then Nistan and Yam, go ahead. Yam. You have your hands up first.
Yeah. I just want to say that what we see now, in my opinion, is simply that the licensing models are not up to date with the new usage that people use. When today you, for example, you license an image or a video online and you just want to use it for your website, there is a special license that grants you to do this. However, if you are a news media and you want to publish it in real time on television, the same footage, the same video, you need to use a different license and different pricing. And if you think about it, it's the same footage, it's the same video, but it's two different licenses. So what we see at the moment, and this, in my opinion, this is where it's going in the future, there will be a license or some sort of a licensing model that grants or permits you to use it for training your own model. And this is how you would do this legally in the future. I don't know if it's going to be, but this is my guess to where it's going at the moment, simply because we don't have this yet. So it's confusing for everyone.
What do you think about the Japan approach, Yam? Remember we talked about Japan just decided that everything is copyright doesn't apply for training, and that it's like legal to train on whatever public material there is.
Look, it would be nice if everything was legal and you could just do whatever you want and use whatever you want. It's great for those that train the model. But I do understand why some corporates are angry that their content is used. And I think that there will need to be some answer in terms of legal answer for those individuals as well, for those corporates and for those individuals as well. It's nice that some states just permits just the whole thing. What I'm not sure about is that, and I think it's intertwined with everything else, is how are you going to know? Because, okay, then there are New York Times is in common call, so it pretty much guarantees that it was used for training. But there are things that are much less detectable, you can say. And I'm not sure how those will be handled in the future. It's gonna be interesting in terms of the legal part of it. Yeah, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Umesh, go ahead, and we have a new commenter, Manny Penny.
Yeah, just a very quick comment on that. Basically, I think at the core of this is going to be whether the models are lossy compression, very lossy compression of the data that goes into training, or they are abstract representation of the data. And that will basically get answered. The second thing is, as Alex, you rightly pointed out, this could drag on for a few years. And every second that passes, there are hundreds and thousands of generations taking place. through, let's say, OpenAI's interface and APIs and everything. So basically, by the time we even reach or complete the discovery and go to trial base, so much material will be out already generated from these AIs that it will become a moot point, because then there'll be models which will be trained on that material and everything. So it's just going to compound itself every second that passes. So unless courts come out and bring an injunction to use of these interfaces, it would be like, it will become a moot point in a couple of years.
Yeah, and by the time, like, it could become like irrelevant as well, especially because they may say that we've taken the steps and now it's impossible to do, which they did quickly. I want to say hi to Irina, just real quick, Irina, before we get and we start talking about some stuff and then predictions as well from you. Moneypenny, I think you had a comment about the lawsuit. And
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm based in the UK. And I'm a former journalist with the BBC, although I did do some print journalism as well. Obviously, the big part of this is the precedent that would be set that would open floodgates for every other media publication to claim the same. And as I read it, which I don't think you mentioned, I'm not entirely sure which media organization it is, because obviously it's in the States, but there's a Business Wire or Business something that has already had an undisclosed commercial agreement, OpenAI or ChatGPT or whatever, which is slightly dangerous. And when I looked in detail at the concerns that New York Times had, as well as replicating, duplicating, scraping, whatever you want to call it, it's actually taking something that has been written by one of their investigative journalists, maybe, and removing part of it, taking part of it out of context, missing a key paragraph that might give a defensive statement that would totally alter the content. For example, New York Times did a big story on the origin of COVID. Now, in journalism legal terms, if you don't give both sides of the argument correctly and give both parties a right to comment, then you're in legal hot water with the publication group anyway. So if an AI engine took out some content and failed to reproduce or just took out certain sections that would render it not being balanced, that would certainly be a real fiery problem for a lot of broadcasters, but also for individual journalists who, some of them, or many of them increasingly, are working on a self-employed basis in the UK, and I would think similarly on a consultancy basis in the United States. So I am concerned about this. I'm very concerned about it. I think it will be fascinating to see how this one goes through. And I think the biggest problem is you've got to look at an international legal perspective, and the legal system that covers journalism and journalists and media in the United Kingdom is very different to the US. But as you may have seen, things like what's happening with Harry and Meghan suing the newspapers and the newspaper groups for millions and millions in the United Kingdom at the moment. The UK law that protects journalists or journalists' corporations, I think, would have an absolute field day if New York Times win this, an absolute field day. So I think it will be fascinating to see what happens. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thanks, Moneypenny. Definitely the precedent here, if it would be set, would be monumental. However, depends on when it would be set. This may not be very much consequential because it could take a while. The US court system is very slow. Microsoft is, big pockets, a lot of lawyers. They can drag this out as long as they pretty much want to. Interesting to see what New York Times will actually get from this or want to get from this. I saw some takes from, I think, Jason Calacanis that said, hey, this could lead to the fact that OpenAI will retrain the GPT without this data. And I found that to be a laughable take. I'm sorry. I just don't see this happening personally. So I think the last thing that we're going to cover in the news before we get to an interview with the Robin folks, which is, I see Kshitish Gupta now coming up and Irina Rish, welcome as well. And then we're going to do predictions. Interview first, then predictions. But the last thing that we want to cover, Umesh, you want to follow up on the Midjourney stuff and how it relates to this?
Yeah, so Midjourney, basically the V6 is quite capable of generating images which are like exact, or rather 95, 98% representation of the frames that you see in famous movies, anywhere from Shrek to SpongeBob to everything. And especially if you go to the Discord server, if you have access to Discord server, Midjourney's Discord server, then you will see that it's getting flooded with exact replicas of what you find in movies and everything. So Midjourney could be, we might very fast hear about what would happen on that front. And one of the ways Midjourney might be looking at getting out of this is to move the generation to the website. It's also influenced by Discord's change of file sharing and everything, but that could be one of the way to insulate themselves. So that is also an area, and I'm part of an AI art space as well. And there are some really big names from AI art in that area, and they have raised significant concern about various aspects of that. So that is another space which is going to come up really well. We saw first hint in the Hollywood strike and everything, but this is going way beyond those things.
So yeah, so for folks, I wasn't able to find like a good thread to mesh. If you have a good thread, please feel free to pin this to the top of the space. The basic prompts for Midjourney were there folks just ask, give me a still image of this movie. Are showing up like incredible likeness to the movie itself, like incredible. Like almost a year ago, you wouldn't have believed that this wasn't a movie shot, and now they're just like coming up with this. Obviously, compared to OpenAI, for example, in DALL-E will refuse to give you responses for this. DALL-E will just say, no, I'm not like copying copyrighted content. Midjourney V6 came out a few weeks ago, I want to say, and I think they're considering this a free like beta or something during this period. And during this period, they're trying to catch like all of these examples, but the internet is gushing with just how much likeness, like for Shrek or for Disney movies or for anime and different things, Midjourney can come up with, and it's really like uncanny. It's really, I think it passes the uncanny valley. It's really there. And that obviously triggers some copyright decision things. And it would be interesting to see if folks like Disney or whoever will try to come at Midjourney as well. I think it's almost it, but I think I lost, oh, there it is. Kshitij, Kshitij, I think. Umesh, just one last thing, and then go ahead and we'll do the interview with Irina and Kshitij from the Robin team.
No, just wanted to say that I posted one particular thread which contains practically all the prompts and how the images are generated, what kind of images are generated. It is from one of the X-handles, proper prompter, who does this. So I'm just shared it in the Jumbotron.
Awesome, thank you. Feel free to stick around, folks who are already on stage, as we're moving to the last segment of ThursdAI. Because this is the last one for the year, we're going to do a round of predictions. And as I posted in the beginning, we talked about this in the beginning. If you've been here and you survived almost the 2 hours that we've been here, now we're moving to the prediction stage. Thank you for sticking around. We are going to do predictions in 5 categories or 6 categories. We'll start with open source LLMs. And yeah, I will not talk. I just like folks in the audience as well. If you have whatever predictions you may have, we've collected a bunch on this tweet that I did that people kept reacting to. So I may just read out some predictions here. And I think it's posted to the top of the space as well. I'm going to repost this again. So this is the categories, and look at the pasted tweets. And then here's the prediction thread that you can reply to as well. Let's do open source LLMs. I'll kick us off, and then feel free to just like chime in, raise hands, or just chime in here. For open source LLMs predictions for 2024, I'm looking forward for architectures that extend transformers significantly. We're looking at the beginning of the SSM models, right? The solid state, space state models. So I'm looking for more of that and maybe some more innovation in that in open source. Folks on stage, what's your 2024 open source LLM predictions?
1 gigabyte models with performance of Mixtral.
So small.
Pretty out there as a prediction, yeah. We're going to see Mixtral levels of performance, because from people who use it know it's pretty good. And we're going to start seeing those at just 1 gigs of size. So then you'll be able to just run them on any iPhone, any Android, any Raspberry Pi. So we should see that same level of performance, at least when it comes to reasoning and problem solving, at 1 gigs of size.
So your prediction, Nistan, just to summarize for 2024, is a on-device, like on mobile device, local model that runs with the level of Mixtral?
Yeah, we're going to see useful models that you can use every day that are about like 1 gig something in size.
Nice, okay.
That's my prediction. I'm going to make that, yeah, in a few months, I think.
Irina, I think Ion, you need to go next.
Okay, yeah, okay. I think I have several trends or gradients that I can see. Definitely, as you said, 2024, just like 2023 was year of LLMs, 2024 will be year of multimodal. That's, I think, pretty clear. So the second thing is, indeed, it's chiming in with a previous prediction. I definitely see smaller models being trained on more data. So basically the trend that started with Chinchilla, so the original Jared Kaplan scaling laws suggesting, not quite correctly, to build humongous models with relatively small data, then replaced by Chinchilla, 50-50 data model size, then replaced by Llama, basically saying that if you actually care about not just optimal compute for training, but for inference, the models should get smaller. So they will be getting smaller, but the data on which they're trained can be larger. And that's why I really believe that continual pre-training and piggybacking on each other work, especially in open source, is what we all need to do. We should stop just chaotically creating yet another model trained from scratch. We could hopefully somehow organize and start building on top of each other works. And we can do possibly things like maybe distillation of different model architectures to a common one on top of which we can all build, do continual pre-training with those models so you can keep feeding those llamas. If you look at the plots of Llama 2 in the Llama 2 paper, even the smallest one is very far from saturation with all this data that they gave it. You can keep feeding it, but probably continually, so you don't have to start from scratch. So I think that kind of consolidation and continual training on more data hopefully will become a trend, and that is a strength of open source community because we can really build on top of each other. I hope to see that.
Yeah, I will just, before we get to Pharrell, I think you came up to also give your thoughts about open source. We'd love to hear from you, Pharrell. We got 2 Llama releases last year. Like Llama 1 came out, and then Llama 2 followed up with like fully commercial license as well. Probably the third one at some point as well, I want to say. Go ahead, Pharrell. Pharrell, predictions for 24 in open source. If you can unmute, and if not, like we'll move. I think Shumanik also came up, and Umesh, I want to hear from you as well. All right, looks like Shumanik is next. Go ahead, man.
My prediction is, so first we saw like GPT-4, when GPT-4 came out, like all these agent frameworks were like exploding, like LangChain agents came out and everyone was playing around with these agents. And it was just a thing exclusive to GPT-4. But I think 2024 will be the year of like agents running on 7B models or like maybe even 3B models. So like all these local models will get agent capabilities and you can do like web search on them. And I heard rumors of someone getting code interpreter running on a 7B model. And yeah, I think this will be exciting.
I wonder if we know who that someone is. Thank you, Shumanik, for the prediction. So local model agents running like locally, is that what I'm hearing from you? Like no longer the GPT-4 API, whatever, folks will start like shipping and running them locally and they will actually do some stuff. Is that the right way to summarize your prediction?
Yes, I think you all should keep an eye on the grammar things because I think grammar will enable this new age of agents running on local models. Because like in grammars, you can really force the model to do the thing you want to do. So yeah, I think this will drive 2024.
Awesome prediction. Okay, agents definitely. We're going to get to agents at the end there as well, but definitely agents in open source, they make so great prediction there. Pharrell, go ahead.
Hey, everyone. So predictions, I think we'll see the end of the dominance of the transformer architecture in the next year. We will definitely see much more multimodal models, as Irina put it, because it just will make models even more capable at understanding our world and interacting with users. We will also, something that I think is a bit more out there that may not be, like that may be more in line with this agent's idea, is that we'll see the marriage of RL language models in viable ways that have not been proven yet, but we're starting to see the precursors, the proto agents now, but those are like dumb because they don't learn on the fly, they don't learn online. Yeah, if you don't know already, like I'm a big proponent of like architecture innovations and how we can beat the idea of scale and like these assumptions that a lot of the industry has on scale being the hammer that hits all the nails, right? And it's just I think something that I hope we see that I'm not sure we will have solved yet is a new benchmarking standard, because as the current benchmarks are completely broken, the leaderboards, all of these are just easily gamed. These are kind of artifacts of pre-LLMs that have carried over into this new world. I think that we need definitely a new standard of how we actually evaluate these models, and we'll hopefully see some more of that in the coming year.
Especially the two trends here, identifying and predicting multimodality and evaluation, I think will meet there for sure, as those are even more complex than just text. All right, folks, I think we've covered open source LLM predictions. Anybody in the audience, you feel free to just chime in to the comment section as well. We'll cover those, and feel free to raise your hand if you want to talk about the next predictions. We're going to talk about big companies and APIs. So let's move there. When we talk about big companies, APIs, we talk about the established big companies, like the GPU-rich companies, Apple, Google, whatever. And then we're also going to talk about potentially big companies becoming big companies as well. Umesh, go ahead. Sorry, I skipped you, and then we're going to talk big companies.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of things in open source. Basically, one thing that I think could come up during this year or 2024 is that we might see an architecture that will allow models to have plug and play weights, so that you can literally like bring in an expertise into the model. And the other one is in the absence of a very strong framework, it's more like an agentic framework, which will improve itself. So basically a self-improving prompt pipeline framework. The early shoots are already there, like in DSPy and other, but that particular workflow will really accelerate in 2024, because that's the limitation that we all are facing right now.
All right. I think we have enough predictions to be able to then review them next year. Alex, go ahead. I think I saw. Oh no, Alex, I think just dropped. Okay. Next, we're moving over towards big companies. Again, big companies that are already big, or companies that are becoming like bigger companies. In my head, that's Mistral. So I guess I'll start. Mistral raised an ungodly amount of money this far. They've showed that they can. They showed open source. I predict Mistral is as they're going into the inference kind of endpoints as well, and they're like showing some of their models are open source, but then other models they're only sending via their APIs. I predict that Mistral in 2024, Mistral the company, is a viable alternative to OpenAI's APIs, as well as specifically coming very close or maybe beating them on some benchmarks or performance. I don't know about like GPT-5, that I'll let others predict, but I predict Mistral is becoming like a big player, not only in open source and the models they release, but also a company that like people are trusting their business on top of, like and becoming one of the like forward runners, probably surpassing Anthropic. I have a feeling that's my prediction for 2024 for the big companies. I want to hear from you folks who are building with OpenAI, folks who are building with like APIs. We can have a bunch of predictions, right? Like we got GPT-4 last year. We got a bunch of updates as well. Who thinks we're going to get something more from Uncle Sam? All right, Shroom, go ahead. Or Umesh and then Shumanik.
Are you looking for only OpenAI or just
big companies, whatever predictions do? If you want to do Microsoft, Google, Apple, let's talk about Apple predictions.
So mine is on Apple. We will definitely see an AI device fully capable of multi-modal capabilities from Apple. That's for sure, because 4M, they're running late, and they should have dropped. They have promised that they will drop 4M on GitHub by the end of December. So that's one of the biggest one. And specifically talking about Google, Gemini Pro might actually commoditize API completely because it will have capabilities that are currently in API space specifically are going to be far beyond what we are seeing currently.
Also, let's keep in mind that just because it's Apple and Google doesn't mean that they're really better than everyone else. For example, ML Ferret from Apple is basically just how Oceans was in the audience model. It's still Lava-based, still uses the exact same proj file. And on Google's side, despite the vast Google resources, their mobile OS-centric LLM was still a GGML file. Yeah, just because it's a big, huge company does not guarantee anything that they'll advance a lot more in terms of the key technology, but they could advance way more in terms of usability.
In the reach, of, right?
Yeah.
Like your and my grandmas can start using this because it's just on their phone suddenly.
And one of the biggest advantage Apple has is having control of the hardware, and that's where I think they definitely score way ahead of other companies.
Yeah, so prediction, Apple will step in. You want to do like a concrete prediction, Umesh? Will we see like a revamped Siri with LLM?
Yeah, so I see specifically in metaverse kind of space, Apple coming with an augmented AR device, which is capable of leveraging AI for all the multi-modal tasks. And on Google specifically with Gemini Ultra, I see API prices really crashing significantly, and that would make a lot of business use cases really great. So in enterprise applications and even in small businesses.
All right, I want to get to George, who has his hand up. Big company API predictions. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, I don't have a prediction about a specific company, but I have a prediction about something that I think it might happen. Is that I think that the entirety of an undergrad CS curriculum, there will be a model that will be able to do that at an A level by the end of the year. If the GPT-4 is already pretty good, but I think that might happen.
So is that going to be a different model? So are you predicting like a next release of GPT this next year?
Maybe. I don't know. Not about any particular model, but I think there will be a big model that comes out of one of the top labs that can ace like a computer science undergrad.
I see. Okay, that's a very solid prediction, easily testable. Shumanik, go ahead. Big company in API predictions.
So I think we're going to get like an extremely good model, like maybe GPT 4.5 or maybe GPT 5, or it could be also from a different company, but so it costs like a lot. Maybe you pay 50 cents per response, or like maybe $1 per response. So a really expensive but really good model.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, that's out of left field. I haven't considered this. I do remember a Sam Altman tweet that says he predicts that people will pay more for the smarter tokens as the average token prices drop down and API tokens drop down. Yeah, I remember something like this. We have a new person, John Doe, who joined as well. If you want to chime in with a prediction for big companies' APIs, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of awesome stuff with the large language models. That's nice. But I think we're about to see some really interesting integrations with Apple planning to release their Vision Pro, Apple Vision Pro, I think it's called, with the spatial computing and all of the awesome stuff they've done with bounding boxes and spatial aware models. All of this is about to come to fruition. I think Meta is definitely right there with them. And I think there's going to be some interesting one-upmanship between the two, at the very least. I think we're going to see some really interesting mixes that have live application product level stuff.
Yeah, so that even is
the most concrete. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm saying that even in the end of 23, we see Meta releasing their Meta Ray-Bans, and that has a multimodal AI in them. You can already press a thing and take a picture of the real world as you're walking around. And then we do see, definitely, I think with the spatial computing stuff, there's going to be a prediction there. I want to hear a more concrete prediction, if possible. John, do you have a concrete prediction? What happens with the spatial stuff together with AI?
I'll say this. I think it's going to be a year of product as opposed to demos. We're going to see a lot more product, and I don't think it's just going to be these main players. I'm imagining there's going to be an iPhone type product that's going to revolutionize things. I think it's going to be launched this year.
Okay, and some of the stuff they already know about, like PIN from Humane, or some new stuff that Johnny Ive supposedly worked with Sam Altman, and so they poached somebody else from Apple recently. Are you predicting like new things or things we already know that will just take place?
This will be new.
New.
This will, in retrospect, in a couple of years, will be like, that's what changed things. That product right there. It's going to be like ChatGPT, but not ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is not enough.
Love it. Okay, so the prediction is there's going to be a new product, potentially hardware, that's going to embed AI into our lives from one of the big companies. This is like 2024 release. All right. Okay, folks, anybody else?
Definitely hardware.
Definitely hardware. Feel free to jump in here with predictions about hardware. Folks from the audience, if you have one and you want to comment, we have one comment from Akshay who joined us often. Meta will outperform most companies in video AI and in mixed reality domain. I think yes to that, definitely. I wanted to add this in the video section, but I do believe that as we're now talking bigger companies, etc., I think multimodality on the input will move towards video. That's my prediction. I think I already chatted about 11 labs and they're like almost real-time understanding of video. We saw Gemini stepping in, and Gemini, the famous demo that was like faked, quote unquote, was outraging for some of us. But that for real, I think in 2024, we'll get there. We'll get to a live streaming video understanding of a multimodal AI. Whether or not that's going to be built into hardware or not in 24, hard to say. I don't want to predict built into hardware, but in terms of capabilities, I think real-time understanding of video, we're going to get there. I think we're almost there. Who else do we have who wants to chime in before we move on to, I guess I did cover video a little bit, right? Vision and video. Anybody else want to do like vision prediction for next year? Irina, you guys built like multimodal stuff. I see some folks in the audience who like definitely worked on multimodality. Hautien from Lava, you feel free to come up and tell us like, what do we think in 24 predictions for vision specifically, or I guess multimodal, including vision? Doesn't look like there's tons of people jumping at the opportunity to talk about vision specifically, but we did cover some of it. Go ahead, Dinesh.
Alex, I am not so much on the vision side, but I can make one prediction on the art generation side, if you're interested.
Yeah, let's move towards diffusion art generation. I'm with it, yeah.
Yeah, diffusion, there are two main predictions. One prediction is now almost certain because Elon Musk actually tweeted about that, is basically we are going to see a full feature film which is made entirely by AI, probably before the end of 2024, even much earlier, actually, the speed with which we are going. So we will see one full-length feature film commercially released in that particular area. So that's one. And second prediction from my side is that we are going to see a lot of artists actually launching their AI model gallery. So basically you have a model, which is a website, and you can go to that website and get the art generated based on the style of the artist. So something that Wirestock is trying to do, but we will see that with the use of Comfy UI and the SDE models. So that's something that will definitely happen. It's already on the way.
So saying feature length, would that feature length be end-to-end generated in 24, or will that be stitched from shorter generations?
No, not end-to-end. I don't think we have that capability yet. I don't know, because the biggest challenge, as we discussed in one of the last episodes, if you remember, is the action connection in the latent space. The models still don't understand when you say blink eyes, right? They don't have that connection. And that's what these multi-modals will bring in. And if that particular problem is solved, then you can go ahead with the consistency in terms of characters, set, everything around that. But basically, that's where we'll go. Yeah, I don't know whether you've seen Salesforce ad, which was released day before yesterday or like 2 or 3 days ago. Okay, so they use Matthew McCartney for the ad, and the entire background and everything is generated using AI. So the only part, so it's a green screen Matthew with entire scene, and all the movements are generated using AI. So we are already there almost.
And also, if we're sliding into the voice and cloning thing, I think 2024, personally, my prediction there is, especially because it's an election year, the voice cloning tech is going to get released publicly as much as possible. I think at some point, very soon, voice cloning to the level of kind of the big guys, right? I don't think that was still open source. Everybody's guarded. Everybody's waiting for somebody else to release them. I think the dam will break in the high quality, super fast voice cloning tech. And once the dam breaks, everybody will start releasing them. We know everybody has this technology from Valley, from Microsoft. OpenAI licensed their like private technology to Spotify to translate. So I'm predicting like a big push in how voice cloning happens, how fast it happens, how prevalent this is everywhere, and how obviously cheap and easy this is on fine tuning on your own or somebody else's voice. That to me seems like a no-brainer happening. We got some new folks on stage. Go ahead, Umesh, and then Ethan, and then Ash.
Yeah, I'll just plug into what you said. So there is one more prediction from my list of things that I have, is that we will see either an app or a phone which will actually translate things live, actually. So when you're talking to someone might be speaking another language, and you will hear them in English, and you will speak something, and they will be able to hear it in their language. So that is real possibility that can happen during 2024.
That's going to happen in the first quarter, because I ordered such a device. It's called the Humane AI Pin, and that's one of the capabilities I'm most looking forward to. Not that I have many people that I talk to who are like only one language, but I definitely want to try. Go ahead, Ethan, and then go ahead, Umesh.
Alex, is it just very quick? Is it live? Is it, because we don't have access to Humane Pin in the UK yet?
Yeah.
So does it translate live as you're talking to someone, and it does like literally
actually
real
latency
time?
I don't know about latency, we'll see, but I know the capability is
I'm
there.
talking about real time.
Yeah, like full real time, like some delay. Like what's real time to you? Google's previously researched that less than 300 milliseconds is almost real time for humans.
Yeah, I'm looking for that Star Trek device.
Oh, I see. Just full, complete real time. Okay. What we have in the UN in the headphones. Go ahead, Ethan, and then Ash, I think.
So I'm not too sure if this has actually been mentioned, but I'll say it's more speculation rather than a full-on prediction. I actually think next year we're going to see maybe like the advent of voice-first interfaces. And what I mean by that is basically recently I think TikTok blew up in the context of ChatGPT. Someone literally talking for about 5 minutes, and then ChatGPT replied basically succinctly, putting everything into a very simple reply. And for me, that was a very unique moment, given that I suppose people use Google for making queries. So the context for ChatGPT is basically like for reasoning through simple conversations. So I have seen like a few apps like AudioPen and a few other apps like that sort of do that in some way, shape, or form. So I think voice-first interfaces would probably be coming. That's one. And then the second thing I see is probably happening would be products, maybe applications that allow you to literally maybe run inference on device instead, rather than actually pushing it to servers. We've seen like these models get really small, maybe Phi and like a few others. So maybe that will help people who make these products to significantly drop costs. So those are like the two things I think that are very interesting that may be coming in 2024.
Awesome. Thank you, Ethan. And then, go ahead, Ash.
Yeah, just complimenting on that part, Ethan, I think you're exactly right. Like with models getting smaller, more people run them on devices. I think today there's mostly enthusiasts, the ones who know their ways around Apple's SDK and Android's SDK. Those are quite messy, poorly documented. I think we'll have a lot more potentially open source projects next year around the deployments and inference on like all kinds of mobile and IoT devices. So definitely right there. But the part that I think people often miss, and I'm not sure there's a better place to mention this prediction than multimodality, is the rise in the number of models designed for chem and bio use cases. Today, we mostly just talk about vision, language, audio when we talk about multimodal stuff. But I think people who are active in the space have noticed the rise in the number of closed source models for chem and bio. And I think next year we'll have this similar boom in open source as well.
Oh, interesting. Can you specify prediction there? What will we see? Will we see like an open source? Yeah, give us like a more specific thing.
I think so. Every new domain generally starts with datasets. Even in multimodality, the conventional one, the datasets are not ideal. So you guys mentioned video. We've worked with video a little bit, and I've discussed it with a few friends in industry. And it seems video models are generally either models designed specifically for video or image models that are adapted for video. And the latter works okay when the image is like static. But once you have like complex motion described, Even like the video specialized models are not ideal. So maybe the data sets in this motion heavy video space will grow. Thus, the video comprehension and video generation will grow next year, like subsequent to the new data sets. Same way with like chemistry and bio. In chemistry, I've just released a few weeks ago a data set with AWS with a searchable index over 7 billion molecules. Those are small molecules for drug discovery, but not only, like also for broader research. And I'm not sure there are like too many well-organized data sets for proteins and biology. We'll probably try to partner with a few folks of that scale to bring better data sets to the industry and maybe also train and release something, maybe first embeddings and then generative stuff.
Awesome. Okay, so moving to... Sorry, go ahead. You wanted to finish up, Ash? Did I interrupt?
No. I feel like it's just pretty hard to say before there is a concrete result. Like all of it is research, so you do 100 of failing experiments before one succeeds. I'm not sure which ones will be the first successful experiments on those data sets, so it's just a very open-ended prediction.
Awesome. All right. We have Ray's and then we have Ravi. Ray's first and then Ravi.
Hello. Hey, everybody. As we know, the OpenAI lawsuit is one of many lawsuits that are out there. But what I see is the technology's gotten to a point where the deep fakes are a couple minutes. And it's going to be easy to imitate politicians and actors and so on. And with all the lawsuits, I think there's going to be more. But at the same time, running in parallel, my prediction is there's going to be a surge in metadata embedding and copyright identification of the ownership and that technology getting inserted into the video, into the audio in such a way that people can actually identify this content is mine.
So a prediction here is a rise in tools or technologies to identify and watermark and know whether or not the generated content was generated or came from the real camera. Is that the prediction?
But not just whether or not it was human or AI, but who the human was. Like it would embed my registration ID or something that I could circle back and go, hey, this popped up in ChatGPT, it belongs to me, and I've got the ID to prove it.
Interesting. That's a great prediction. Yeah, waiting for that as well. Thank you, Ray's. Ravi, go ahead. Your prediction towards, I think we lost the categories, but we're around video and diffusion.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. So I think one category that has been missed out is countries making their own LLMs. There is a huge push, for example, Bharat GPT. So there are local, okay, here there's a big push for it. I think that will fructify in 2024. That is one thing. The other one is the rise of deep fakes, given that there are so many election seasons coming across the globe. So AI's application in deep fake and the kind of those kind of applications exploding. I think that'll be the major realization in 2024. The other one is that we are totally missing out the development of LLMs or domain-specific LLMs for applications in bio, especially with the major partnering between Google and the company called Ginkgo, which is a leader in this area called synthetic biology. And those applications are also coming to in 2024, many of them, as I see it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we'll get more bio stuff. I think Ash, we were talking about this as well. Thank you, Ravi. I think, folks, we're at the 2.5 hours mark, and we did like a bunch of predictions. I want to ask like Toby maybe to do, you just came up to a prediction, and then we'll close out the space, and we'll tell you all Happy New Year soon. But Toby, go ahead. You just came up. What's your 2024 predictions?
I think that we're going to be seeing a big thing in the video game industry, especially for new people, especially with this stable diffusion and those kinds of systems with the image generation. We're going to see big strides into 3D model generation and the animation for them. We're probably not going to be seeing like end-to-end, but I see a possibility where with the 4090, with open source models all running locally, you can do image to 3D model to animation. And it will open the doors for a lot of people to create games and create mods and things like that. There's my prediction.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm waiting for the gaming industry to step in here. I've seen some examples, and NPCs are still NPCs. And why, if we can have them like be smart with local inference as well? I'm waiting for that in 24. I don't know if it's a big AAA game, but I'm waiting for an actual game to interact with like models, maybe via mods or something. Definitely. All right, folks, it's been a great time chatting with all of you for the past 2.5 hours today, but for the past 8 months generally on ThursdAI. This is a great like ending to our year, basically, as we're going towards the new year, trying to predict the insanity of the developments that we've been covering from week to week in the space, and obviously on X everywhere. We did a full recap of the last year, and that last year we did that on the birthday of ChatGPT, so I think we'll continue this hopefully next year as well. We're going to do like a full year recap on the ChatGPT's birthday, and then we're going to do next year predictions, and we're going to look at the predictions recorded from today's space next year, and then see how many of us undershot and how many of us overshot, because some of this exponential growth is not obviously linear, and some of them comes in spurs and surprises, and sometimes crazy shit happens in the middle of the year, like the creation of the whole field of open source AI that now we're like all tracking. This happened this year, and it was great to see. So with that, I just want to tell you all that if you have enjoyed these spaces, we do them every Thursday. We're going to do one for the first time next year, hopefully with a bunch of stuff to update about AI. There's also a newsletter field. Please feel free to follow that. That would be great, called ThursdAI.news. It's on my profile. If you missed any part of today, the recording, cleaned up recording, will probably get released hopefully by end of today. And that's usually a great way to follow up with everything, even if you missed these spaces. As we come up to the last few minutes here, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who came up today, but generally everyone who usually comes up to the spaces. Umesh up here, and then we had Nisten and Pharrell, and Yam came over, and like a bunch of folks I see actually in the audience, like just a bunch of great friends that like starting to become like parts of this community of ThursdAI that make this conversation way more interesting and way more engaging, as I'm not an expert in many of the stuff that we're trying to cover, but many other experts join and give their opinion, and I'm asking the questions so that you and I will understand together. And just a shout out to obviously my employer, who allows me to continue doing this on a weekly basis, Weights and Biases, who is a big part of many of these advancements that we see just from behind the scenes a little bit. So if you haven't checked out Weights and Biases, definitely check out some of our stuff that we post on my profile and the main profile as well. And I think with that, I will just tell you all Happy New Year, upcoming Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. And then I think we undershot with our predictions, honestly. I think all of us, as much as we try to imagine, it's going to be incredible to see the new advancements from big companies. I think on-device stuff is happening like quicker than we expect, and integration into the physical world, I think, is going to be a big theme as well. And we barely touched personalization. All these devices are dumb every time you start to talk. Oh, sorry. All these LLMs are dumb every time you start talking to them again. They're like a goldfish. They don't remember you. I think a huge thing is going to be from the perspective of, will this thing that I've talked to yesterday with remembers what I talked about what I talked about yesterday? I think Tab from Avi Fishman is like moving there, and I think we'll see huge strides in how these devices are actually mined to actually augment humanity a little bit. So with that, I want to thank all of you for sticking with us. Those of you who've been here for the past 2.5 hours, shout out to you, and a lot of applause. And yeah, I'll just play us out, but we'll see you here next week, and have a happy new year and great start of the next year as we're covering all of it. Cheers, everyone.